Jeff Simmons, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you here today.
Thank you.
Okay. So Jeff Simmons, you are the superintendent of the Idaho Digital Learning Alliance.
Yes.
Your one-word answers are just so fantastic at the moment. Yes, I'm here. Okay, Idaho Digital Learning Alliance superintendent. They put you in charge, and we were just kind of joking about that earlier, which is fantastic because you have a lot of experience in IDLA. So let's talk about that first. I am a person who loves to provide context for people.
Great.
Thank
you for the opportunity. So I started with IDLA as a part-time teacher, and I was hired with the first group of part-time teachers that were hired when IDLA was started in 2002. Which that's going to age me a little bit, but that's okay.
We already know you're old. It's fine.
There you go. This gives me away a little bit.
Just kidding.
So I was teaching social studies and English online, did that, as well as teaching at 2 different alternative schools in the Treasure Valley for about 6 years. And then I started full-time in 2007 as a social studies curriculum specialist for IDLA. So I built social studies classes. I did hiring and training on the teacher side, and I've taken different roles through the organization. I've been the curriculum director, supervision and instruction director, and then most recently I've had the opportunity to be the superintendent.
The superintendent. Yeah, that's awesome. So when did you become the superintendent?
Just over 2 years ago.
2 years ago. So how is it being the superintendent of an online public school in Idaho?
You know what? It really is awesome. And you're going to say, well, of course you're going to say that, but it really is. You know, there's some really great things that we do at IDLA that I get to share about, and hopefully I get to talk about today on this podcast. And I get to see some really positive, exciting things, which in education, especially this time of the year during the legislative session, we're not always focused on the positives. But there really are some great positive things out there. We get to work in partnership with so many people across the state. And so I love it. It's great.
Okay. So we started this conversation actually initially when you said you did some homework on my podcast. Yes, I'm bringing that up at this moment. So when you reached out to me, which I thought was like super fantastic, like, you know, because I'm like this PTA president over here, I do this little side thing. And I really appreciated that you were proactive in reaching out to an organization to say like, hey, you've got parents. We want to reach out to parents. So I'm going to put a pin in that for just a second, because as we were meeting, I was like, hey, I actually did a whole episode on IDLA because I'm a big supporter of it and all those things.
Yeah.
So you come in here and you're like, hey, I looked up your podcast to do some homework. I'm like, yeah. And what did you say?
I said everything you said was correct.
It wasn't bad. Those were the words out of your mouth. I was like waiting for like, hey, like that's pretty good, Alexis. It wasn't bad. Thanks so much, Jeff. Glad you're on the podcast today.
I'm here to pump you up today.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm really feeling it. So you reach out because you want to make sure that parents are aware of what IDLA is. And so one of the things that I think is so awesome about IDLA, and it's so important for parents to be aware of this, is that Idaho is a leader in education school choice.
Yep.
And I think that's something that's like really fantastic. And IDLA is actually a big part of that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So first I kind of want to talk about, again, because there's plenty of people who haven't listened to that first episode. I'm telling you, if you haven't, you should go listen to that right now.
It's great.
Yeah. Because Jeff says it's not bad. And but there's like a lot of different components of IDLA. There's a lot of things to keep track of. But one of the things that is confusing actually is the name. So I kind of want to get to that first, actually, so we can kind of like, kind of narrow this down a little bit so people actually know what we're talking about.
Okay. So Idaho Digital Learning Alliance is our name, or IDLA. You can find us at idla.org. Try to keep it simple. We were created to be the state virtual school for the state of Idaho. So what that means is that we are not a charter school. We're not a full-time school. We are supplemental for every student enrolled in a public charter school in the state. And so we use online learning as a way to extend and enhance what the school is able to do out of their brick and mortar program, or we do serve the virtual charter schools as well and supplement their catalogs. And so that's what we were created to be. And everything that we offer has been in response to needs of kids or schools or stakeholders. So it's just We can't fix every problem in education using online learning, but there's a lot of things that we can do to still extend opportunities to kids, and that's why we're here.
Okay, so I realize that IDLA is pretty straightforward, but the way that it's funded for parents isn't necessarily. And that's where I think there's a little bit of confusion or some layering that comes into this, right? Because we have IDLA, which you said is open. I mean, actually, technically it's open to any student in Idaho, right? Like they can be a homeschool student, they could be private, public, charter, micropod, you name it. If I've left something else out, an online student, a virtual student, whatever, it's open to everyone.
Correct.
But the funding through which people can receive through that's the thing where like the name has changed a lot. And I would like to kind of make sure that we cover that a little bit.
Yeah. So first part of that question. So any student enrolling through their public school can take one of our classes. So, if you're at Emmett High School and you're an Emmett student, you can enroll in our class. If you live in Emmett, but you don't attend Emmett High School, you could enroll through Emmett High School and take one of our classes. So yes, open to everybody. The program you're talking about is the Advanced Opportunities Program, I believe. And so that's been available through the state. It's gone through several iterations. So there's been different efforts throughout the years through the legislature to try to create opportunities for kids to accelerate or have access to college credits or technical credit programs or different things of different natures. And so they've had different programs with different names, the 8 and 6, the Fast Forward, the early graduation. There's been a program for that. And now they've kind of lumped everything into what they call advanced opportunities. And so it is it's $4,625 available to every student. They raised the amount last year, I think. And every student has access to that. They can use it for college credits. They can use it for AP exams. They can use it for their CTE credits with our program. There's 2 ways to use it, which you covered really well in your great podcast. So one,
giving me a compliment here on my
one
episode.
is obviously we offer some college credit level courses, and so you can use those advanced opportunities funds to cover the college credit portion of the class. Then secondly, you can take an overload class. So if you're taking a class that's above and beyond the school day, so say, I have 7 classes a day, I take class number 8, that's considered an overload. Or if I'm taking a class in the summer, that would be an overload. Then you could use the advanced opportunities dollars to cover our course fee.
Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. Well, I'm moving on to the next thing that I just like how you just like stopped there for a second. I was like, oh, and I'm on again. Okay. So I want to clarify, because one of the things you said, it's open, that's $4,625 is open to every student. I think I thought it was only open to public school students, but is it open to private also?
It is. And if you go to the State Department of Education website, there's some ways that you can see how students can leverage that. For example, like NNU, for example, you can take college credit courses there. If you were a private school student and you enrolled through your local school and you're taking one of our classes, so yeah, there's some access to that.
Yeah. Okay. And I was just like, before we had the episode, I was like looking on my school district's website, and it had like fast forward, it's using the terminology fast forward, which I'm hearing you say is outdated.
Yeah, everything is now what we just call everything advanced opportunities. If you go to the Department of Education website, that's what you're going to look for is advanced opportunities. And they've just lumped everything into one program, which in some ways is really nice, because then you can just use your funds for all of those purposes however you need them. It's not, this amount for this program and this amount for this program. And
advanced opportunities is for 7th through 12th grade.
Correct.
Right. But so this was the thing that I didn't realize, was that IDLA is available before 7th grade.
Yes.
That was new information to me. I did not know that.
Yeah. So we did initially start, in the early stages of our program, we really did focus on high school credit and getting the cores covered, getting electives covered. We expanded into middle school. When the pandemic came around, we were asked by the state board to create a K-5 program, because we knew that there were schools that had to close, that didn't have access to virtual resources. They needed something for their kiddos. So we actually offered a full K-5 program during the pandemic, social studies, English, science, go outside for recess, the whole 9 yards. Once schools reopened, most kids went back to their in-person school, which makes sense. That's where they were before. And so what we did with our elementary was we pivoted it into a program that we call Launchpad. So Launchpad is a K-5 reading intervention program. So we just focus on reading. We use the same program that schools are using. It's called iStation. And you go into iStation as a student, you take an assessment. It identifies where the holes are in your learning with reading. It prescribes some activities that are going to help you meet those things. On the back end, there's some great data that the teachers can look at. And then with our program, we offer the school essentially the opportunity to add a second teacher for reading. So during your reading time, your teacher can group kids into your high level and low level learners. They can give us the low level and we do some intervention. We have a teacher with them on Zoom 4 days a week, also working with them on the intervention activities in iStation, or they can give us the high level learners and we do enrichment with students that have already met those benchmarks but need to continue to grow. And then your in-person teacher can take the other group. And so it really allows the school to better personalize and individualize that instruction. We've seen some great gains from kids in that program, and we're really proud of that program. So that's probably the newest piece of our program.
Is that the new announcement and you just walked right into it?
New announcement. You want some breaking news?
Whoa, breaking news.
Breaking news here
Yes.
today on Our Kids, Our Schools.
Thanks for getting that right.
Got that right. I did. It wasn't bad. It wasn't
It's
bad.
actually super
So breaking news today, so the way we're funded, we receive funding from the state per enrollment that we have. Enrollment is one student taking one class. That represents about 85% of our funding. The rest of it, we have a little tiny grant. Well, we have tiny compared to, the overall size of our budget. And then we have course fees that we issue to schools. That's statutory that we have to do that. Next year, we are dropping our course fees from $75 to $40. So
Whoa.
there you go. So $35 back in your pocket as a family. And we already have some classes that are under that amount. For example, the Launchpad is $30. We try to keep things reasonable because we know that often schools are passing that fee on to the family. And so we say, you know what, we don't want cost to be a barrier for kids. So next year, there you go, breaking news.
Oh my gosh, that's almost like half. That is nearly half off.
Almost half.
That is almost half off. Whoa. Wow, that's wonderful news.
Yeah.
That's really awesome. But when you say that, one of the things that I hear is that so at my kids' high school, they use the advanced opportunity dollars to pay for dual credit.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, what I'm hearing that say is actually the advanced opportunity dollars will go farther for
Yes.
those, right?
And we already waived our course fee for a dual credit class. So if you take a college credit class with our program, your course fee is $0. We just eat the cost on that one because, again, we don't want cost to be a barrier to opportunity. So we've already scholarshiped those and we build that into our budget every year. But for the other courses that you're looking at, yes, it will save you on some money there.
Well, and that's really cool because when I think about the CTE programs, for example, and you were just talking about it, advanced opportunities can pay for that dual credit or the different classes that you're offering online.
Yeah.
But then the advanced opportunities will also pay for a CTE, what do they call that? The test that you take for, what's that called?
Yeah, you have an exam that you have to take at the end of the pathway.
Yeah.
And so, for example, one pathway that we offer where we can actually offer the complete pathway is CNA. So we have a 4-course sequence. The first 2 classes are fundamentals of health professions and medical terminology. And then we have a 2-semester CNA class. The first semester, you're working through the different clinicals that you're going to have to do. The second semester, you're out in the field working with somebody from your local community in a facility somewhere doing the things. And then when you get through all 4 of those courses, you can actually take the exam and you could graduate with your CNA, which is, it may not be the most glorious job in medicine, but it's a starting point, right? And from there, you could stack on other credentials or you could go to school. Your credits would transfer into a college program. And so your advanced opportunity funds would cover the college credits associated with those courses, as well as the cost of that CNA exam.
So it's free.
It can be. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Through advanced opportunities, technically that
Yes.
whole process can be totally free. That's so awesome. One of the things that I'm curious about with the CNA thing is when you get to the third and fourth level, do those have to be done through the school, or does IDLA help with that process in finding someone local?
So with the CNA, we work with the school to help them identify an appropriate facilitator for the kids at the local side. But, we don't have the ability to bring every kid into a facility to do the hands-on. That's what you're going to see at a lot of the larger districts where they have a full CNA program. Our instructor has worked in that environment. She'll connect with the school. Often every community, even our smaller communities, you still have to have a dentist. You got to have a, retirement home, some type of clinic that's accessible. And so we can help them identify a place where kids could do the clinicals, identify a person within that facility that has the credentials needed to walk kids through those clinicals. And then we can work in partnership with them.
Okay. So then one of the things, and I was a little bit confused when you were talking about the elementary stuff. I was like, was that the new announcement that you just told me? And I walked us a little bit faster to the new announcement, which is super exciting. Thanks for that breaking news here on Our Kids, Our Schools.
Just for you guys.
Yeah. So, but I wanted to go back to elementary actually,
Okay.
because, you're talking about how you have that launch pad, which is super awesome, but the summer slide, which we, you and I know, and parents experience and teachers talk about, that summer slide, which is when you end third grade and you're moving into fourth grade, and there's those, nearly 3 months where education isn't happening,
Right.
formally. And so kids are just, at home, and maybe they're not getting all of that education. There's that slide that occurs where they start up here and then they move down low. You have something to address that, which I think is awesome.
Yeah. So we offered a Launchpad program in the summer as well. Last summer, we had some school districts that used that to offset some of their summer slide. We also had a couple schools that partnered with, we had one that partnered with the Boys and Girls Club, one that partnered with a library. So it didn't necessarily have to be offered at a school. But they were able to offer, even if the kids weren't in the program for the entire summer, they were still able to do enough that when they came back for the fall, they weren't as far behind as they would have been if they did nothing. And so we were really excited to see that. I think the schools were really encouraged with that. And so we're talking to our schools right now about how can we increase what we're doing in the summer to help offset that, so that when kids come back for the fall, they're ready to go and they can just excel.
Yeah. I think that's such a fantastic idea. And I mean, I was telling you before, when my kids were in elementary school, I remember buying all those workbooks, from Costco,
Yep.
hey, let's do these things and stuff. I'm trying to create my own thing. And I totally get that some parents, that's just so natural for them, or they love it, or their kids. And I think for me, I'm just the kind of a parent that would have just really enjoyed something that was just already put together. Right. And then, you can access. So one of the questions I had was, though, if a parent wants to participate in that summer, you call a Launchpad program, okay, Launchpad, can they do it just from their home, or do they have to do it in connection with a library or in connection with their school?
You still have to have a school to register through. That's how we report grades at the end of the course. It's part of how the school receives funding for that. It's part of how we're set up. We don't take any direct enrollment. That's part of how we're set up legislatively. So you still have to have the school willing to set up a section. But certainly, kids are always going to do better when they're at a school or at a certain site during the day. They have that dedicated time and space, but certainly our courses can be taken from home as well. With the littles, it's helpful that they have an adult to help them get on. A kindergartner can't log in well on their own, right? Fifth grader can probably handle it. So if they're at home, it's helpful to have that parental involvement, but yeah, certainly they can take it at home.
So help me understand that, because I think I'm a little bit confused at this point, because I know 7th through 12th grade, they sign up through their school, right? So let's say you've got a 6th grader who is interested in taking some kind of a class because they want to get moving on some of those, just some of those courses. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But they need to in the springtime, say to their counselor, tap, tap, hey, I want to sign up for this class. And the counselor will get that all rolling, but that class is done at home. the seventh grader does not go into the school. My seventh graders, I mean, my kids never went into the school for the summertime.
It can be either way. So
Oh,
we
okay.
have a lot of schools that have figured out that if they have the kids taking the class at school, they tend to do better. And so often, especially during the school year, you'll see the computer lab reserved for a couple periods a day. You have an IDLA class on the bell schedule. That's when you go to the computer lab. There's somebody in there to make sure that you're actually doing what you're supposed to do. And then, we deliver the instruction, content, everything that way. You can take it from home as well. But what I would say is that if you have a child taking a class from home, it's really important that you're involved as a parent, because what we know is that learning isn't just a student with a textbook and a class. Like, that's not all of learning. There's some relationships that are involved. We need to help students feel motivated and encouraged to continue. They have to learn to persevere through tough concepts. And a lot of that comes just with the emotional support provided by a caring adult. And so that's a big piece of the program that I don't think everybody always thinks about. So certainly at a school, they can provide that with that structure. If they're not at school, the parent can help provide that structure at home. Make sure they have a space where they can work, make sure they have a time during the day, make sure you're looking at the resources that we provide you so that you know what they're supposed to be doing, and being involved that way. And we've tried to make it easy for parents to be involved and support their kids.
Yeah, so I will say that the IDLA support from from IDLA itself to the parent has immensely improved over the last
Good.
8 years.
Good.
I will say, that has been my experience with IDLA.
It's not bad now.
No, you're right. I had an experience and it was not bad. So and I was telling you before, I have actually, as a parent, been really impressed with the teachers at IDLA. I was telling you, I've only had one frustrating experience as a parent, and it was because it was during the summertime, and one of the instructors was pretty rigid on a couple of the testing things and stuff.
Sure.
Which is tough during the summer if you go on vacations. My kid got it done and it was fantastic and we dealt with it, right? Because that's just part of life.
Yeah.
Learning how to navigate the world of being a student. That's part of life and it's good. But all of the other experiences were really awesome just in terms of teachers working with us and stuff. But even within the last couple of years, I would say maybe since you became the superintendent, Jeff, we could say this, that the communication has vastly improved between the teacher and the parent. So much so, it's not that much. It's not gobs. But there, I have gotten some reminders and I'm oh, that's a really nice reminder. Oh, they have office hours, or, oh, that's right. If I have a question, I can ask them. It's not just this entity that's out there.
Yeah.
It's something that's real.
Right.
And it really started to feel more like that as the years have progressed.
Well, I do appreciate you saying that, because that has been one of my goals. Is I want, and that's part of the reason I'm here today, is I want parents to know what opportunities they have through our program, but I also want parents to know how they can support their students so they can be successful in our program. Most parents today didn't take online classes, right? It wasn't a thing. Mm-hmm. And so how do I support a student with something that I didn't do myself? And so if you're a parent, you can go and find the IDLA app and download that to your phone. And we are going to push you information to that app about your kiddo. It's just about your kiddo. It just goes to you. You can see their grades. You can see what assignments are missing. You can see what actions your student could take to improve their grade or their progress or their learning. You can get contact information in there for the student or for the principal in the class. We want everything to be accessible without having to remember a 15-letter username and 20-letter password that you'll never remember and have to write that down somewhere, and then you have to log in and then you have to click 5 times to find everything. We just want to make it super easy. And so that's one thing that we've worked on in the last couple of years to push out to parents, and we're really hoping that more parents will use that tool. And if you are using that tool, we want your feedback on it. We want to make it effective for you. So please let us know.
So what other tools do you have? What other resources are there for parents in this whole process?
We've relaunched our website about 1.5 years ago, tried to make it much more parent friendly. So if you haven't been to our website in a while, I'd encourage you to check that out. When you land on the landing page, it's just going to walk you through the basic registration process. It's going to direct you to our course catalog. You can see every course that we offer. You can open up the syllabus, see what's being taught in that class. You can see the next times that it's offered on the calendar. We have the app that I just mentioned for parents. We really try to be open. So your teacher's contact information is going to be in there. It's not a 1-800 number. It goes straight to their phone. It's something that they're going to answer directly. Same with email, same with the parents, same with me. You can call me if you want. But we really want to be accessible and available to support you as you support your kid.
And how many students do you have through IDLA?
Yeah, good question. So this year, right about the time of this recording, we're hovering at about 52,000 enrollments for the year.
Whoa.
So
that seems like a lot to me.
Yeah, an enrollment is one student taking one class. So if you took 2 classes, you'd be 2 enrollments. On average, we see kids taking just under 2 classes a year in our program. So they're taking about 1 class a semester, something like that. So 52,000 students is roughly what, 28,000 students, something like that.
And so a couple of different things though to kind of like pull apart here is like I'm thinking about advanced opportunities and IDLA. So those are 2 separate things.
Mm-hmm.
And advanced opportunities, can be used for, let's say, like a dual credit class. Mm-hmm. And right. A dual credit, let's say my kids are at Bora High. They're not, but let's say they're at Bora High in Boise School District. And Bora High has a college English class. And so my kids go to take that, and it's a dual credit class, and they used advanced opportunity dollars. But that's not their going through IDLA.
Right. Yeah, you can use advanced opportunities dollars outside of IDLA. Absolutely. So if your school offers college credit classes, you want to take AP exams. Again, there's the the CTE opportunities through your school. That's all available to every student, whether you use IDLA or not. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to talk about a couple of different like opportunities though, like to give people some examples of like things they can do. Right. I think that's like there's just like helpful tips, right? Like just ideas. So one of the things that like I did, like one of my kids wanted to do was initially like he wanted to graduate early. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, just so you know, if you graduate early, you don't get to go anywhere. Like you're at home, like you're not, and you don't want to be a 16-year-old going to college. Like that's actually not fun either.
Yeah.
And I don't think you're going to be like emotionally ready for that. So like, that's not happening. So then he kind of like changed his mind and was like, well, yeah, maybe mom and dad like maybe have something figured out in life. And so maybe I should try something else. And so then it was, he started taking these classes in 7th grade. And he looked to see what some requirements were in high school.
Yeah.
Right. So it was like, as a 7th grader, he looked to see, and there was like a history class. And he was like, well, I'll take that history class. So he took it as like an overload his first semester of like 7th grade. And so, but in that process of taking overloads during the school year, and then he'd take 1 or 2 classes during the summertime, that then freed up his schedule as a junior and senior, and even like in some of the ways through high school. So then all of a sudden it was like, whoa, now I have this opportunity to either like spend my time doing the things that I love, which for him ended up being music, or he could have like done any number of things. So that's something that I love that IDLA offers for kids.
Yeah. One of our highest enrollment classes we call 8th grade career exploration. So every student is required to have what they call an 8th grade plan by the end of their 8th grade year. Now, schools implement this differently. And we know that the ratio of students to counselors in the state is horrendous, right? So counselors don't have a lot of time with every student. But what we know is that they're supposed to have a plan when they come out of 8th grade that says, here's my career goal, and here's classes that I need to take to help me get there. And so the 8th grade career exploration course takes kids through that journey. So it gives them an opportunity to consider some different careers, what they could do. Different, is this a technical certificate pathway? Is it a college pathway? Is it military? What is it that I'm trying to get to? And then they can essentially plan out their high school courses so that they can get to that destination quicker, like your son did. And so if they're able to get on some of those courses earlier, it could free up some classes where they could take some dual credit, things like that in their junior, senior year. So that's a great class for kids to look at.
Is that just a 1 semester class?
It is.
Okay.
It is. And we have a lot of middle schools that will actually run it as a 9-week class as well. So in middle school, often you have the elective wheel where you do a different class every 9 weeks. So we have a 9-week version of the class that schools can run as well.
Okay. And then one of the other options, well, two of my kids have done this so far, is that speech is something that's offered at school.
Hmm.
And then,
Yeah.
but IDLA also offers that as well. And
Yes.
they have taken the dual credit speech online through through IDLA, and they do it over the
Yep.
summertime. And then they like freeze them up so they've done that for speech and for health.
Great.
Actually, those are the two they've done.
And we see a lot of that in the summer. So our highest enrollment classes in the summer are 1 semester graduation requirements. So economics, speech, health, lifetime fitness.
Oh my gosh, my kids all took PE
There you
online
go.
over the summer, and and I wanted them to do that as a mom because I was like, this is like such a great way to make sure that they're active all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why not? So we see a lot of kids taking those 1 semester required classes in the summer with our program, and then that opens them up to take a 2 semester elective during the year with your son. It could be music or, choir, or perhaps I'm interested in a CTE or something like that at my school. And so we see a lot of families do that.
So, what then are like other things that kids should be aware of when they're entering, especially like some of our high schoolers, right?
Yeah.
Because they're the one, I mean, like, are they your largest percentage of students that are accessing IDLA, do you think?
High school is still the largest percentage. Middle school is very strong in our enrollment, especially middle school electives. But I would say, the 9-12 is still the biggest chunk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, and I'm sorry, like my brain's like all over this. It's like, I'm usually way more organized than this. I was telling you that I was up like at 3:00 this morning, which is like totally not an excuse to have my brain like all over the place, but it is a good reason. Like you're like, the husband like wakes up because the wind, like there was just like crazy wind, and
Yeah.
then he like goes in and turns on the light outside, and now I'm awake, and it's like, you're in the like, I don't say that I'm old. I talk about age like in levels. So I'm at like at a really good level. So you get to this like certain level of like age. And sometimes when you wake up in the middle of the night, then like your brain just like switches on and it's like not going to turn off. And I tried to fall asleep for 45 minutes and I was like, forget about it. I'm getting up.
Might as well do something productive.
And I did.
There you go.
I totally did. So anyway, so I apologize for my brain being everywhere. But one of the things that I learned that I thought was like super interesting recently was that 33% or a third of Idaho students who take speech do it through IDLA.
At least.
Yeah.
Yeah. And some of that is because of what I just said, that there's kids that want to take that in the summer, right, and free up their schedule. Also, speech is a specific endorsement for a teacher. If you're teaching speech, you have to have a speech endorsement. So if you're a school and you're trying to offer speech to kids, you have to have enough kids that need speech to employ a teacher that has the speech endorsement, or you have to have a teacher that has speech and some other endorsements and they teach multiple subjects. And so it's one that can be trickier for some of our especially smaller schools to recruit. And so that's one area where sometimes schools will say, you know what, like we've got IDLA as an option, let's just use that here. And we have schools use this that way. We'll have schools that for one reason or another haven't been able to hire a teacher with a specific endorsement. We can help fill that hole temporarily. Unfortunately, there's always something that happens every year where a school loses a teacher. And we can certainly step in and help in those situations as well. So we're happy to help provide that capacity for our communities.
Well, and I'm going to give IDLA a plug right now because I know that, the legislative session is going, and I have had a podcast about graduation requirements and updates. And one of the things that I know was that when the Department of Ed brought these graduation updates was their reasoning behind this was that they didn't want to add an additional graduation requirement to districts who maybe already had some, or, the myriads of reasons why they didn't want to do this. So they looked at all the requirements and they said, well, we're going to minus the speech one. Right. We're going to add in digital literacy.
Yeah.
Hey, that doesn't mean you can't still require it like at district level, right? Like that doesn't like impact teachers, but there's just been a lot of noise about this at the Capitol. So I just recently was talking to a Department of Ed employee, like who's been working on this. And he was like, Alexis, when I know for sure, I'll let you know. And I was like, awesome. So this isn't like a for sure yet, but what I'm hearing is that actually in the agreements, and the compromises that are made along the way, it looks like they're going to require the digital literacy and the speech class.
Yes.
That like both of them are going to be there. So actually, it's actually bumping up one requirement from the state.
Yeah.
So the reason I'm giving the IDLA plug, besides I think IDLA is great and also advanced opportunities, I'm a big fan, is that there is going to be one more graduation requirement for students.
Yes.
And I, as a mother, am telling all the other mothers and fathers out there that I think those kids should take speech through IDLA in the summertime. That's my suggestion.
We're happy to take them, and we will have a digital literacy class ready to go in the fall as well. So we try to make sure we work with the state so that when, last year it was personal finance, right? That was a new thing. And so we try to make sure that we have an option to support the schools if they have trouble implementing that. So we'll have the digital literacy as well.
I think that's awesome. I'm like really excited about it. So, and then like listening to you talk, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to like go talk to my 7th grader about this. You say career exploration?
8th grade career exploration.
8th grade career exploration. I'm totally going to put her in that because she's only in her school days are 4 days a week, which I'm going to tell you, like, I absolutely love. I didn't think that I would love it that much, but I do. I love it so much. And so I'm like, wow, that Friday, like I'm going to fill her Friday with this like 8th grade career exploration. I think it's like so awesome.
I'm sure she'll be very grateful to still have school to do on her day off.
I'm sure she'll just be so elated about it. It's amazing. So one of the things that I'm curious about is like, will you walk through what a typical class looks like online? Because, right, I mean, I would say probably most of your students are in person, right? Like a West Ada school district or a, Coeur d'Alene school district, right? They're like, they're kids who are, I'm imagining most of them are probably public school kids that go into a brick and mortar. So that experience is different than an online experience. Let's talk about that.
I really appreciate that question because I was just at a national online learning conference a couple of weeks ago. One thing we were talking about is that it's difficult to define what online learning is because all of us do it differently. And on top of that, most students today had some type of online experience during the pandemic. Right. And whatever that was, if they didn't do online learning before that, that's what online learning is to them. So this is what online learning is.
So I'm going to pause you for just a second. I'm sorry, because you're talking about the pandemic and I'm remembering my child who is a junior right now when they went through the pandemic and everything shut down and he finished his 6th grade year, then started his 7th grade year online. It was every other day online for his school. And he just told me recently, as I was like talking to him about something, I was like, well, like, isn't that like when you got like, I think he was like playing like Minecraft with a friend or something. And I was like, didn't you like get into that in 7th grade? He's like, yeah, well, I mean, I'd like leave my camera off and then my friend and I would go find each other on Minecraft and like go play on Minecraft when the class was in. And I was like, oh, that's right. Cause I was like, you got a couple of like C's in the 7th grade. He's like, yeah, that's because I turned the camera off and like go play a game.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I'm just saying that because like in my mind as a parent, when I'm thinking of online learning for, like some experience that could be possible for some parents, right? They're like, oh, my kid's supposed to sit in this thing and he could turn his computer off and be totally disengaged. And that has not been my experience of IDLA.
Good.
So anyways.
I'm glad to hear that. I mean, and during the pandemic, what we call that is emergency remote teaching. That's what we call that type of online learning. And basically that means like teachers did the best that they could with what they had.
For sure.
But they didn't have the training, the background, even the platform necessary to really do it well. And it's not their fault.
No.
It's nobody's fault.
And I like want to be really clear. That's like not a knock on the teacher.
Right.
That is what my 7th grader did during the class. And he got away with it.
He wants to play Minecraft, he's going to play Minecraft.
And like as his mom, I didn't know. I mean, this is like 5 years later and I was like finding out about it. Thanks.
But he had a really awesome Minecraft.
He did. He had a really good time with his friend.
There you go. So
yeah. Okay.
They at least got the social piece in there. There's probably some learning going on. We can talk about that. But what our classes are mostly asynchronous. So you and I are synchronous right now. We're here at the same time. Asynchronous means I'm going to set up a lesson that you can log in and go through at any time. And as the teacher, I can go in and see what you did and grade your work at any time. So we're not necessarily hooked up at the same time. We're not on Zoom together. we're learning asynchronously. We do have an option every week for the students to connect with their teacher. There's multiple ways they can do that, whether it's through office hours or some tutoring or things like that. And then we have interaction pieces within the course. So there's going to be interaction between the student and the material itself. It might be a little practice game or something like that they can do. There's going to be interaction between the student and their teacher. Which if you're in a flex class, you might have some oral assessments or things like that you have to do. And then there's going to be interaction between the students, which most often is a discussion board, but there's other activities you can do as well. So I'm going to give you a question. Let's talk about that, have that conversation here online. So we try to incorporate that social aspect as much as we can. But for us, the big piece for us is quality. We align our courses to the national standards for quality for online learning. We review our courses with the Quality Matters rubric, which is a national organization that reviews quality for online courses. We were just recognized as the K-12 superstar for Quality Matters last year.
Whoa.
That's not what they call it, but that's what I call it.
Yeah.
I think my team's pretty awesome.
You were recognized as the superstars of online school.
K-12.
Is that what I just heard?
We received the K-12 award for Quality Matters for building outstanding curriculum.
So IDLA received the Bravo Award. Now I'm changing all the words. The Bravo Award in 2024.
Better than not bad.
They gave you a way better than not bad.
Yeah.
The Bravo
We
Award.
did. And
That's awesome.
we were really proud of that because it shows the hard work that we put into building that curriculum, because we actually, our teachers are not the ones building our classes. We have a content team who are mostly former classroom teachers, but that's all they're doing is building content. We're building our own content to Idaho standards. We're only teaching Idaho concepts. We're not worried about what's taught in other states. And we can maintain that. We can go and update it whenever we need to, realign it, if there's a change in the standards, that kind of thing. But then the teacher's receiving that, and then they can focus on the teaching part with the kids. So giving good feedback, following up, calling you if you've been missing for a few days, getting in touch with parents. It gives them more time to do that because they're not having to do the lesson plan piece. And we already know that lesson plan piece and all the activities have been built to a high standard. So for us, quality is very important. If we can't do it well, we're not going to do it. So very proud of the team for that award.
Yeah, that's very cool. Congrats to you guys.
Thank you.
Very cool. So, and like when my kids, I saw them work through some of these IDLA classes, right? Units are opening at a certain time and they're ending at a certain time, right? There's an open and start date. Just walk through some of that stuff so people know.
So most of our courses are in what we call a cohort model. So that means everybody starts at the same time, ends at the same time, progresses through the content on the same schedule. So I might open up Unit 1 and maybe you get through Unit 1 by Wednesday. It takes me till Friday. That's okay. We're still working through Unit 1. We both start Unit 2 at the same time. We do have a flex program, which is open entry, open exit. So that program, you can enroll anytime and start class the next day, and then you go as quick as you're able to go. So if you get done with class in 10 weeks, that's great. If you take the full, I think we give you like 18-ish weeks, something like that as a maximum, that's okay too. But you have the ability to self-pace. So we do have that program that does that. But most of our classes are in that cohort model, which kind of mimics what you get at the face-to-face school, right? With your calendar.
So, and then when you've got those like units that open up, one of the things that I know, just like to kind of share to be helpful, is that like if those kids are taking it over the summertime and you know that you're going to be gone for the first week of July, like go through that calendar, see what is open at that time. Let the teacher know like really early, like, hey, Jimmy's going to be gone during that week. And the teacher, it's been our experience, the teacher's like, okay, I'll open it early for you, or I'm going to extend that deadline for you based on like how the student's doing and throughout the course.
Reach out and let them know what's going on. The earlier, the better for the teacher. And then that way they can plan and help make sure that your student still finishes on time, and then leverage that parent app, because the parent app is also going to be, there's always the dog ate my homework or the LMS ate my homework or whatever happened on that app. You can see for real. It's like, this is turned in, this is not, here's the feedback you got on this assignment that would make this thing better. So use that.
Yeah. And I will say like my kids have gotten like some pretty decent feedback. Like, I was always like, oh, that's awesome. Right. Like it's not some just abstract person out there. Like it is a real teacher, conducting that course.
Yes.
And then the other thing is that I know I'm having like a tech person come on from your group to talk about technology, but I did want to mention in here about YouTube videos because I think this is important. It's a concern for some parents.
Sure.
And so because these kids are like watching linked videos.
Right.
And so talk about that for a little bit.
So we build, like I mentioned, we build all our own content. We use a lesson building tool that allows us to bring in all sorts of things, links to text or videos or little interactives that we can build. And it's all right there embedded in the course. We host all of our videos on YouTube, but we're able to use some educational settings within YouTube so that you're not getting like, here's some related videos, here's something that's not related that you can link to and goof around on. You can't go straight to YouTube from the video. It's just the video. And we have somebody who's reviewed that video, make sure that all the content's appropriate. There's a transcript available if the student is hard of hearing, and you can close caption. It should be closed captioned if that's helpful as well. So that's our platform for hosting those. But we've made sure that we're putting kids in a safe environment.
Mm-hmm. That's really important. Thank you for noting that. And then the other thing that I just wanted to share, like when we're talking about what it's like for the kid to work through these things, they're like in every unit, I think in every class my kids have ever taken, there's always a discussion board.
Yes.
Right. And so that discussion board is an opportunity for them to see the prompt or, some assignment, they're submitting it there, they're writing their stuff, and then they go through and they have interaction with other students there.
Yep. They're usually required to have some level of interaction and just saying like, hey, nice job doesn't usually count because that's really not helpful.
Right.
So, like it wasn't bad, not helpful feedback. So we have some expectations around that interaction for kids, but really for us, the importance there is that, you learn what you learn from a textbook, but you learn more from others who just read the same thing and have different perspectives. And so that's where you can broaden your understanding is in that discussion board.
So it's interesting because I can't remember if it's my master's or my, no, it was during my PhD. A year ago, I was like taking a class, in person, and the professor was like requiring that we provide certain level of feedback on some of these discussion board things. And the professor at that time was like, this is what good feedback looks like. It includes something good they did. It
That's
includes,
great.
like he kind of had this blip about it. And I mean, I thought it was darling because here I am at a certain level and a bunch of the other students are, maybe 20 levels under me. And so I'm just thinking like, hey, that's great. I'm sure that he's learned that it's, these college students really need an opportunity because there are some master students in this class that they need a little bit more direction. But one of the things that like I'm thinking about as I'm sitting here with you is that I think a lot of times in some of our like in-person classes, kids don't learn how to give feedback.
Yeah.
And when I think about it, like learning how to give feedback is a really important skill. And they're learning that actually through those discussion boards with those expectations from the teachers on IDLA.
I'll agree. It's hard to hide in the online classroom. It's a little, and I don't say that to be demeaning towards our in-person teachers, but it might be easier to hide in the back of a room of 40 kids, knowing that the teacher doesn't have time to call in everybody. But online, like there's no back of the room, front of the room, and I can see what everybody's done and if they've contributed. And so I do have to I am forced a little bit to do some of those things that I might not do on my own. And I think you're absolutely right. They're learning some skills that they may not get in a different format. And the other part of that I would just add on to that is at some point in your life, you're going to do online learning. It's going to be for your work. It's going to be for a college. It's going to be for something. And so even the experience of learning how to learn online is super valuable for kids because we manage student learning in the brick and mortar classroom. We tell them where to go, when, what they're doing, when it's due, when to get there, when to get home. We manage all of that. When you're online, you have to manage all of that for yourself, right? Like I'm going to tell you when the unit opens and when things are due, but you're going to have to somehow become master of your own learning there. And that's a hugely critical skill that we don't always teach well in person that kids are going to come away with an online learning experience. So
everything that you just said, like I have mixed feelings about because I agree that it's it's a really good skill to learn online. And to your point, like professional development or, so like as you get older, there's different, like your master's programs, there's all sorts of different things that are offered to adults online.
Sure.
And I mean, I remember when I took my master's, it was like adult organizational learning and leadership. And one of the classes was like the future of education. And the professor talked about like how the future of education is online learning.
Okay.
And I was like, no, I was like, no, but I understand the material that's suggesting that. I see,
Sure.
like I see the computer and stuff. And I think the thing that like hurts my heart about that is that it's online and not in person. Like I'm like old school. I mean, today just at the Capitol, I was like, listen, I remember using the typewriter as an elementary school student. I remember when my first computer for my family arrived in that gateway, cow printed box. I remember, that dial-up tone when I was attempting to connect to the internet. That didn't mean it was always going to work, when I was attempting to connect to the internet. And so it's like, there is something I think for me that like I love about the in-person experience, right? Like, and I think there's something, so important about that. And another thing I think, another part of that for me is that there is one of the things someone was on here once and he was like, I don't remember who it was. And he was like, well, if we don't get kids on computers now, like they're going to be behind later. And I was like, hold up. Actually, I didn't have a computer until I was like my own, until I was a freshman in college. And I actually think I've turned out like really well. And so we were kind of like talking about like what that looks like. Actually, it wasn't on my podcast. It was on his. That's like, it's all coming back to me now. It's Brennan from Main Street, Idaho, which is a great podcast. And shout out to Brennan. And so what I get from what you're taking, from what you're putting out there is that IDLA is a resource that's really awesome for kids.
Absolutely.
And there are going to be some benefits and perks from having these experiences. It's not necessary, right? But there's benefits and perks, particularly, it was always like, I mean, to your point, like when you're talking about elementary students and they know that students perform better in an elementary school setting when they can at least be with other kids who are also learning on the computer. It was my experience with my middle school kids that as the mom, I did a lot of work checking in with them. Are you doing that? Because they were doing it from home. Like, are you doing this? All these different types of things. But as they got moved into high school, I was like, you're getting older now. You need to launch one day.
Right.
You got to figure this stuff out. And so it did teach them how to do those things, be responsible for that type of learning in that type of a setting. And I do think that there is value in learning how to learn online because we do live, my kids, my 4 teenagers live in a different tech world than I lived in. And it's not to say that I feel like let me be really clear. I'm not saying abandon the fun, playful things of, the 80s and 90s. And, people would argue the 50s and 60s and 70s, though I wasn't around during those decades. But
me neither.
Yeah. And but I hear what you're saying that like, it is valuable for kids to have these experiences because online learning, I mean, I like I'm almost like shaky when I say it. It is the future of maybe adult learning in that way and having more opportunities. We see it more and more.
Yeah. And I'll give you this, even if online learning isn't for you, that ability to learn how to manage your own learning is applicable outside of online learning. When you get a job and you have 6 tasks that you have to do, which one do you start with? And how do you know you're going to get them all done on time? I mean, that's the same skill. Or if you decide to go to college, you don't get registered for your classes at college. You have to register for your own classes. What classes do I take? What classes am I going to need? When should I take them? So, I mean, some of those things are, they're going to help with online learning, but they're still skills that you need to master. What I would say about the technology piece is kind of the same thing we said about AI. And I know you're going to talk with our tech director a lot about AI.
I'm like super excited about it.
He's a great resource for that. But what we talked about when AI first came on the scene was like, look, like whether we like it or not, it's a thing. And we can not like it and it's still a thing. And so kids today will always have access to AI. There will never be a time when they don't have it. So telling them that they have to keep it in their pocket and not use it is almost a disadvantage to those kids, because what we need to do is say, look, this is a tool that you're going to have access to. Here's how you should use it appropriately, because you're going to be using that when you get out into the working world. So I would say the same thing about, whether it's learning to use a computer or the internet appropriately or digital literacy or whatever that is. It's just showing kids how to use the tools that they have appropriately to set them up for success.
And when you say kids, every time you say that, I'm thinking teenagers. That's like the word I'm putting in my head. I just want you to know that, because you might be thinking something differently than me. But when you say it, I think teenagers, because I think about like how, hey, we have cars and cars are here and they're incredible, right?
Yeah.
But like we don't let a kid get behind a car in Idaho until they're 14 and a half.
Hopefully, unless you're on the farm.
Unless you, but you're on the farm, that's different. But like
Yeah.
in a car, like a permit, 14 and a half in Idaho, right? And so, but just, I mean, I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I, you know, what you're saying is that there needs to be some level of monitoring what technology kids are using and how they're using it. And I 100% agree with that. And so as a parent, I should be guiding my student towards what's appropriate for them now and what's not. And we can go, deeper into that with all sorts of things. But I think that's the important thing. But we're not just restricting them from it because we're afraid of it or we don't know what to do with it. Because then what will happen is they'll see this thing that everybody else is using and they'll get curious about it and try to do it on their own. And that typically doesn't lead to the right path.
Totally. And one of the things, like, I mean, to that point is that like there's this big event coming up on Saturday, April 26th, More Social, Less Media, a community summit, which I'm like super excited about. And it's all about like tech and, youth mental health and like how to use, what to be aware of on tech, right? Yeah. And like different resources for parents. And it's going to be at Eagle High School from 12 to 4 and it's totally free. And I've invited you and like all of your people. So I want you to tell everyone about it.
We'll spread the word.
Yes, please do. Because just like you want parents to be aware and of the Idaho Digital Learning Alliance. Like it's a great resource for them to be aware of because the parents are the ones making helping the kids make the choices.
Right.
And like we want parents, I want parents to be aware and, help them with the information they need to like navigate this, new, like this tech world that we live in. And at the end of every conversation, so you might not have listened to any of the conversations. You might just have only listened to me talking to myself at the very beginning, which is great. Like I would like to get back to some of those episodes because I think that they're good and I'm giving out good information.
You have a lot of things to say, Alexis. People need to hear them.
Yeah, thanks. Right. Yeah. So what's so funny and like I think sometimes is hard to come across is you have like a very dry sense of humor. And when I met you for the very first time and I like walked in and sat down, you like said something and I was like, whoa, this is not a traditional like superintendent that I am like, this is like kind of cool. This is kind of fun. Like we're going on a journey together. And
life is too short to be boring.
Yes.
Let's just be honest.
100%. So my point in bringing up that podcasting again, that you thought was not bad was that might be like the thing between us forever, Jeff.
It might be.
I might remember this forever. Is that I always end with like a takeaway. And I, like what's something from the conversation that you're going to take away? And people usually like me to go first.
Okay.
Unless you want to go first, Jeff, I'm always happy to let the guests go first.
Well, I think a takeaway that I have from this conversation, the reason that we want to engage parents is because we know there's so many more parents like you that want to be involved with their kids, that want to be involved with education, that want to know what options are out there for them. And there's lots of things like our program that people just don't know about. And the more that they know about it, the more rich experiences their kids are going to have. And so my takeaway is just conversations like this always fill me with hope because what I know is that it's really easy to find the negatives in the world. It can be harder to find the positives. But if you look for them, they're still there. And there's a lot of things that we should be grateful for in our state and in education. And I think, the opportunity to talk to you and other parents through this podcast is one of those things for me today.
Thank you. That was like such a nice takeaway. Whoa. So I'm going to tell you that, the podcast always comes out a little bit later, but I've had kind of like I was like joking on Instagram. I was like, I feel like it's been like 2 dark days, because both the bills that I was supporting at the Capitol died in committee. So, and I was, kind of just bummed.
Yeah.
It's a bummer feeling, right? When you have this thing that you really care about and it just doesn't quite cross the line, the finish line that you're hoping for. Doesn't mean it has to be the end, but you keep going and growing from that. I had a friend say you're going to have more failures than successes. So it's like, I just got to keep going. Got to learn from this, which is important. But after that, I knew that this conversation was coming. And I remember thinking like, oh, I got to get pumped up for this. So I'm not such a drag, on the show. And, so not only I have really appreciated your dry sense of humor here and, kind of poking fun at, letting me poke fun at you with the, it's not bad, Alexis, I did not know. I love being aware of resources. And so the thing that has really helped me feel energized over the last, little bit that we've been talking is that, gosh, there was something I didn't know about, that I can use for my kid in middle school.
Great.
And that, and I'm energized about the fact that you had your, big announcement here, which is awesome, which I think is so fantastic for Idaho families. I love those good things, right? You've cut the price nearly in half for Idaho families, which I think is so fantastic. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And then the other thing that I'm taking away, and I lead with so many people when they talk about, well, we really don't have that much choice, or what really are my options? Right. Idaho is a leader in education school choice.
Yes. And
as you've come on here and talked about IDLA, it makes it's super cool that you guys your curriculum got the Bravo Award in 2024. That is so awesome that, that an Idaho school got that. So so thank you so much for sharing that, because I'm taking that away too, that it's there are incredible things happening here in Idaho. And don't get me wrong, there's plenty of crummy things happening here in Idaho too. But to your point, it's important to notice the good things that are happening here.
Absolutely.
And you and the Idaho Digital Learning Alliance have some really incredible things that are happening. And I appreciate you coming on here today to talk about these amazing resources for our Idaho kids, for our parents, and the incredible things that your group is doing for our Idaho kids.
Awesome. Thank you for the opportunity today. Appreciate it.